Hey there, doodle lover. Are you ready to finally feel proud of your doodle's behavior? Not just their adorable face? Then don't miss my free 10-day Doodle Parent Challenge starting September 5th. It's the training reset you've been craving. Live, science-backed, and built just for doodle parents like you. Head to thedoodlepro.com/parent challenge to save your free spot now. That's thedoodlepro.com/parent challenge. I'll see you inside. I've been impressed with today's guest since I first saw her on stage at a dog training conference. And apparently I'm not alone. The first half of my interview with today's guest became the most popular episode so far, as of all of the Doodle Pro Podcast internationally chart-topping episodes. If you work at zoos, you already know today's guest. And if you're a doodle parent, you should. I have admired how she starts from a place of empathy and compassion while using or teaching her scientifically based methods when working with husbandry and care for the pets and animals in our midst. Enjoy the second half of my interview today with the Laura Monaco Torelli. And if you want to catch the first half, I think it's a can't miss. Grab that on episode 47 of the Doodle Pro Podcast. We can all benefit from her skillful and empathetic approach to husbandry and caring for the animals in our midst. Here is the second half of my interview with the talented trainer, Laura Monaco Torelli. During the first half of our interview, we talked about how many doodles can be uncomfortable with the necessary brushing and grooming and nail trims needed to keep their skin and their paws and their coats healthy. What do you say to a client who says, well, my doodle will let me do those things if I restrain them? Doodle breed dogs are easy to love, but can be challenging to parent. I'm doodle expert Corinne Gearhart, also known as the Doodle Pro, and I'm here to help doodle parents have a more fulfilling and rewarding experience with their doodles. No one has professionally worked with as many different doodle breeds or has more experience with doodles than I have, and I love to share my expertise in a fun, compassionate, and non-judgmental way. From my years of work and education in the pet care and dog training industry, I have an incredible network of skilled training, grooming, and veterinary professionals to share their knowledge with you and give you the doodle-specific answers you're looking for. I hope you enjoy today's episode as I help you parent your doodle like a pro. What do you say to a client who says, well, my doodle will let me do those things if I restrain them?
It's a great question. I would ask them, again, hopefully not punishing them for speaking freely to me.
Yeah.
I don't want to be condescending or be like, oh, what you're doing is so simple. Let me show you. And if it were simple, Laura, I wouldn't be asking you to help me. So I would say, what about getting used to it? Can we break down a little bit more? And what can we change in the environment that makes, after you're done with it, really hopefully reinforcing? So have you tried a shorter duration brushing session, maybe 15 seconds, you put the brush away and you go and you run with your dog in your safe fenced in backyard, or you pop a leash on with your dog and you go take a hike while you offer treats. And I'll offer out things that they can give their dog after is my initial way in, and be like, what have you been doing afterwards? And they're like, nothing. I just put the brush down and I'll just say, see there, it wasn't a big deal. Yeah. And I walk away from my dog and I'm like, let's talk about how we can maximize on the effectiveness of consequences that we can use in the environment. And then I'll talk about the use of food, talk about the use of playtime if the dog likes it. If you can, just have a little jar of food right there. That's an easy grab and give. So you can brush, stop, food, brush, stop, food. and then remind them this is a process that we're hoping over time that your dog will have less intensity and duration of avoidance behavior over time and go, eat the brush, and your dog runs up to you and looks at the treat jar. Then I know you've been doing some great counter conditioning and desensitization.
But that just feels so far away that my dog would ever be excited to see the brush or the nail trimmer or the ear swab, that you could get there. And you've gotten there with different species.
Yeah. And I think an appreciation that I have coming from working with exotics, where we did what's called protected contact training, there was no free contact for safety. These are wild animals. And some of them were rescued from the wild. They were either taken from sustenance counts, they were injured in the wild and deemed non-releasable, but still going in with them is a safety risk. So we had to get creative by having a barrier in between us, but saying, I still need to trim your nails, or we still need to get a voluntary weight. And we didn't have the ability just to grab them and get it done.
Right.
But I'm also hopefully increasingly empathetic to the real world challenges of that have our dogs, cats, but we're talking about dogs, where it's like there is free contact and it's easy for a human to get frustrated and just grab the dog, no matter the breed. But if it's an itty bitty breed, I'm just going to pick you up so you can't move at all. Just trying to find some strategies where I don't want the dog owner to feel overwhelmed by my recommendations, to be like, have you tried? Let's try this initial step. Have you ever brought food into some of the grooming or the ear care games at home? Or and I'll just put that out there so we'll get a yes or no. And then I'll say, are you willing to change some habits for the next couple weeks? Could we try this instead? Could we change this in the environment and then change what you're going to offer your dog after you're done, maybe just for a smaller duration of time? And let's just keep like a basic journal, and you rate it 0 to 3. 0 being worst attempt ever of checking their nail, to 3 being the ending of a happy Disney movie. And if you can rate it for the next 2 weeks, really putting in the effort to change some of your habits, let's look at the ratings to get a little bit more objective, because we're in the weeds. We're feeling subjective about this. And then I'll craft a plan from there.
To me, the crux there of misunderstanding is that with fear and anxiety with animals, they don't just get used to it. Left alone, if we just keep putting them in that situation and keep restraining and keep doing whatever that they're fearful of, that can grow.
And that lends itself to this point where you and I recognize learned helplessness versus the dog owner saying, see, they're getting used to it. And
or they let me.
Yeah, we just see a shutdown dog who is as still as possible because it's learned helplessness. It's not opting in and saying, this is something that I'm enjoying. And when I see that very still dog, again, I'm leaning on the client conversation part of it, because there are some that just are like, I don't care, my dog is fine. They'll just get used to it. Never escalates. I just have to get it done. But if that dog handler, that dog family, the dog owner is inviting me to give feedback, then I will. If I'm just sitting at a table like this with you at a conference and you sit down next to me and say, I just do this with my dog because they just have to get used to it, you didn't really ask me a question. So I'm just going to be like, I don't know. My feedback
that happens with training all the time, right?
It's like, come in invited. It wasn't a question for me.
Yes.
I don't have to share every thought in my head with everyone all the time. I'll just sit there, sip my Coke, and be like, they didn't ask me a question. And I'm not going to get on a big pedestal right now. I'm just sitting at a table at a conference, enjoying conversation with people. Someone sat next to me, said that out loud. They weren't directly engaging with me. So this is not the time for me to be offering any thought. They didn't ask me a question.
Yes.
So there are some times where I'm like, I don't have to give every thought. So that's also something too, where I feel that I can contribute when I'm asked and I'm invited to, right? I don't have to walk around going, it has to be this way. If someone wants my feedback, I am here to offer it and be supportive for it. And it's none of my business if someone doesn't want my feedback. I'm just going to focus on the folks that do.
And I make the assumption if someone is volunteering their time, like all of our time is valuable to spend listening to you and I have this conversation, that they're invested in how could I make things better with my dog. And so I feel invited in that way to share like more details, but that's excellent. It's an excellent example of just professional boundaries and maintaining your own sanity.
Another thought, and I know I've mentioned this when I was on Hannah Brannigan podcast, Drinking from the Toilet, about ways in when it comes to certain handling procedures. And one of the tips that I offer is observing conditions, observing situations where our dog lets us look at their paw. So let's say it's the end of the day and you're cuddled up with a book or you're watching a movie and your pup is snuggled into you and you're petting them. And all of a sudden, next thing, you're petting their right ear that they wanted no part of being touched when you were trying to pair it with treats. You were like, reach for the ear and they'd run away. Reach for the ear and they'd run away. They're like, I don't want food. I want distance as a reinforcer. But now you're cuddling and you're like, oh my God, I'm touching the ear. It's happening. And so one of the ways in for your listeners to consider is to observe situations where their dog staying comfortable, whatever that means, maybe pretending to check for ticks or bumps in the coat or knots, where you might touch a little bit and then go back to the belly rub. And you might touch a little bit behind the ear and go back to the belly rub. And they're just nestled and taking a nap. And I wouldn't push it at that point. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I peeked in the ear. This is great. And if their dog opens their eyes, that could be an opportunity just to calmly stand up, walk in the other room where the treat jar is. They're going to hear you open it. They jump off the couch and come over. And I just gather a couple treats. I don't make a big to-do. And then I just walk. I'm like, I'm going to go check laundry now. And even doing that type of pairing where it's like, we were cuddling and you let me touch your ear. And then I went back to rubbing your belly. But then I calmly got up and went to the other room and I scattered some of your meal. I am now going to grab these scissors because I need to trim at the base of your butt so that we don't get all the crusty stuff around the base of your tail. And as soon as we open the cabinet for the scissors, opening of the cabinet is a cue for the dog to run away. So just your thoughts on that.
Sit and stay right there. We'll be back right after this quick break. Hey, quick break, because I've got something just for you. If life with your doodle feels more chaotic than calm, you're not alone. But you don't have to do it alone either. I created the Doodle Parent Challenge to help you go from frustrated and confused to confident and connected in just 10 days. No force, no fear, just science-based tools that actually work for doodles. It's free. It starts September 5th, and I'll be there guiding you live. Head to thedoodlepro.com/parent challenge and grab your spot now. Let's make calm feel possible again. I feel like that's beautiful because the pet parent doesn't feel the urgency of this has to get done. Of I need to put these eardrops in. I have to do the eye ointment. I must finish this brushing because they're in danger of being mad and I know that's painful for them. When it's just built in to these little everyday moments, if the dog opts out and doesn't want it, you don't feel pressure. And that brings me to something important I wanted to ask you. A lot of pet parents are surprised at the idea of letting their dog say no to different care for them and husbandry, training, and work with them. Can you talk a little bit about consent and letting our dogs have a choice in the matter?
Oh, yeah. And when you say, can I talk a little bit about it? That's so funny because I have a lot to say. This is going back to Are we dealing with an emergency versus is this something that we can build a little bit every day as part of our fun activities with our dog? And so that's the delineation I want to make there.
Yeah.
This is an emergency. This is something where, I know it hurts to touch your paw, but you have a piece of glass in your foot pad from the hike. You're bleeding, and now we need to get this taken care of. Versus when I talk about husbandry on hikes or husbandry at home, some of my fun hashtags, when I'm taking my big boys out on hikes, I stop a couple times on the hike. I'll give them a treat. I'll pick up a foot back like they're a horse. While they're standing, I bend the foot back like it's a horse's hoof. I'll do a quick paw exam to make sure they didn't cut it or scrape it on anything in downtown Chicago. And then I put their foot down, they get their balance. If they want a treat, it's available. If they don't, go sniff. I think consent is a label that we have to write from second to second because consent is for the handler as much as it is for the dog. And there are situations where when I used to work as a staff trainer for a vet behaviorist for Dr. John Sirabasi, who's now retired, I would have to sometimes restrain the dogs for a blood draw before they would prescribe any medications. And there were times that I would say to Dr. Sirabasi, I am not comfortable restraining this dog. This dog has a bite history with people. And even with a basket muzzle on, I feel like I'm still going to be at risk of getting bit. And I don't think the dog is going to be safe either.
That was your side of the consent piece.
Yeah, that was my side of the consent. Coming from my zoo and aquarium background, we were cleared to work with an animal. It wasn't like, here's your dream job. And then I would walk in with a great horned owl. It was, we would be slowly acclimated to getting to know each other. And then the senior trainers and my supervisors would say, Laura, do you feel comfortable working alone with this owl under these types of training conditions, protected, free contact? For the everyday dog owner, I think there's so much gray about the dog is saying no. Can you describe to me what you're seeing that's making you describe that behavior as your dog saying no? And then again, I'm getting more helpful information from the client, but then I'll ask the client, what about trimming your dog's fur around their eye is stressful for you? Where do you say no? What if the vet asks you to basket muzzle train your dog to make vet visits less stressful? But you're telling me you don't want to have anything to do with basket muzzle training because it's stressful for you. I look at that consent and saying yes or no is valuable information.
I think you brought a beautiful point in about the human side of the consent. I think what people are often really surprised at is when we reward for the dog opting out. So if we're doing, I don't want to get too technical for our listeners, but if we're doing like a chin rest and they raise their chin, that we're rewarding when they say no, people are really shocked about that.
Yes, but lifting their head could be a yes. And this is something, again, I dug deep at Clicker Expo Live. They actually invited me to present a presentation that was called The Chin Rest Deconstructed.
I love it.
So I spent 2 hours, some amazing demos. Bree Blakeman from Noble Wolf Dog Training and Melissa Millett, who is an amazing trainer up in Canada. And they brought their dogs. Melissa has a little Chihuahua.
I've seen her work. Yes, I think you've shared some of her demos before. Yes.
And Bree worked with her dog, and then I worked with my dogs, and we did some live demos with our lab teams that signed up with their dogs. Circling back to your point is, if a dog is offered a chin rest, and I bring in, let's say, an eye drop bottle, and the dog picks up their head to look at the visual stimulus of the eye drop bottle, I would say click and treat, because we're pairing the visual stimulus with positive outcomes. Versus some might say the dog said no because they lifted their head, so wait till they put their head down before you bring the eye drop bottle closer. And I'm thinking, let's talk about some considerations on that and why I would relax criteria and the shaping process to reinforce that initial head lift to keep my rate of reinforcement high.
Yeah.
Pair that stimulus with positive outcomes in the form of a quick and treat. And also for some dogs, they might want to shift back a second to get better balance. Maybe they lost their footing. There could be a lot of what ifs for the dog lifting their head. versus a narrow scope of they said no. And I'm like, no to what? So anyway, that was a deep dive.
Love it.
And did a chin rest, and that was 2 hours though, with some great trainers.
That's getting like beautifully granular with it. If we were to pull back for people who this is brand new, talking about consent, that it's okay for the dog to opt out.
And them backing away could still be an opt-in, no more than if you were, I don't know, you stopped by a coffee shop and you went to reach to get a cup of coffee, but someone spilled something hot next to you and you backed up for a second and you were like, oh my God, there's a stimulus that might burn me. Not that you would say out loud, there's a stimulus, but oh my gosh, there's something that occurred in the environment that cued me to back up to keep me from getting burned. Oh no, you know what? It was just a milkshake. So that wasn't going to burn me. It might stain my clothes. Now I'm going to reach back in to get my cup of coffee. It's not keeping you from getting what you wanted. It was just you backing up and going, something just happened in my environment. Oh, okay. I'm okay.
I've gathered, and now I can step back into this.
I'm back in. And it's not like the moment you backed up, the person at the coffee shop took your hot coffee and went behind the scenes and took it away from you and said,
shuttered the doors.
Yes. Laura just said no to this hot cup of coffee, so I'm just going to take it away. Again, this is such a deeper dive when it comes to talk about consent that this podcast is just scratching on. So
perfect.
Thanks for asking.
I have a lot of trainers that work with Doodles reach out in frustration of the pet parent is on board with really counter conditioning grooming with their coats, but they feel like they need more time than the amount of time they have before the coat needs to be cut again. Does that make sense? And like, really, it should be every 4 to 6 weeks, but the dog needs more time than that to get in a better place. My thought is to really do a shave down to add more of a window. Then the shave down's uncomfortable. If you were to have a client with a coat similar to that, with a similar need, what advice do you have?
Oh, you're asking a person who's had ridgebacks for 20 years. I know, right?
And I'm making you feel more secure in that decision.
Yeah, I know, but it's for any of your listeners. I have a short-coated breed of dog for over 20 years.
Or if there's a medical veterinary procedure that there's a timeline, it can feel like this external pressure on top of changing the emotional response to a dog.
No, thank you for rephrasing that. In a example, that is more what I am asked to collaborate with. So let's say someone wants to work on trimming their dog's nails at home, but their dog needs more frequent nail care for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And one of the areas that I will reach out per the client's permission, I'll reach out to the vet with some questions about how often do you feel that this dog needs to have its nails trimmed? And 2, what is the dog's current baseline response to having a nail trimmed in the vet office? And for some, and this is where Dr. Kelly Ballantyne and other great veterinarians advocate for a pre-sedation protocol. Now, I am not licensed or qualified to discuss pharmacology, so I won't. But whatever that looks like can help significantly with altering the dog's chemistry just enough so they're not living through this completely stressful, full-on nail trim where they're basket muzzled to the vet and there's 3 staff pinning them down. What could a pre-sedation protocol look like per veterinary guidance and approval to help reduce the stress for the dog and the handler? And then I spin that with at home. Can we work towards touching or trimming like one nail? So trim one nail and call it, go for a hike, load up your dog, do some treat, do some playtime, whatever your dog loves to do, call it on that one nail.
Yeah.
But then my job is to even break down the nail trim procedure even more and to help identify where in that procedure are we seeing the dogs escalate, saying, you're not going to do any more here too. Did I?
You did.
Question
You did.
again. Okay.
And for people that we've given them just a taste, this is such a deep topic that both of us, I know, could talk a long time about this. If they wanted to learn more, I know you have your great program, Get Set, Vet, and Groomer. How do you say it for me clearly?
Ready. It's called Ready, Set for Groomer and Vet. I do have a Facebook page called Ready, Set for Groomer and Vet, Laura Monaco Torelli, but also my animal behavior training concepts, Laura Monaco Torelli. Folks could just visit my website, lauramonacotorelli.com, and you'll find your way to my site.
Wonderful.
And Instagram.
I so appreciate it. You've been extra generous with your time.
It's great questions.
This is a delight.
Oh, I'm so thrilled too.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Doodle Pro Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And I invite you to follow me on Instagram at the Doodle Pro for behind the scenes peeks at all of the adorable doodles I work with daily.